simplifying our processes this year, and this new setup gives me zero excuses when it comes to needing to film. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Taylor Lloyd. I'm your new tech bestie, and I'm super excited to break down this new filming setup that I built. Now, before we get started, I have to give credit where credit is due. I popped the two videos up on the screen that really helped me get the fundamentals of this setup down. This is not an idea I created from scratch. I definitely have tweaked it and made it my own, but these two guys definitely help, so I'll make sure to tag them down below as well. But if you're one of those people who gets really overwhelmed when it comes to setting up and shooting, this is going to help tremendously with that. I feel like most of my issues came from the multiple tripods and stands and the lights and the mics, and by the time I was done setting up, I'm like, I'm over it. Yeah, that's where this comes in. So I know it's a lot of pieces, but do not be overwhelmed. If I can do it, you can do it, okay? Okay, now let's get into it. First things first is going to be the stand. This is definitely the star of the show. It is the core of the setup. The stand is from Newer, and it is a heavyweight light stand, essentially on wheels. Now I love this because it really gives you a good base to build out on. And because it's on wheels, it makes it extremely remote, so I can film pretty much anywhere I want around my space without having to lug a bunch of equipment because everything's in one place. I also like that when it came, all I had to do was pop on the wheels and that was it. So 10 points for easy setup. Now, after I got the stand up, the next thing was the lighting, and this is the Amarin 60DS. This light is so powerful and it's so tiny. I am impressed constantly by the company Amarin. In general, all of my lights in my office are by Amarin, but this one takes the cake. It is about half the size, if not smaller, than my Amarin 150C, which is the light you see back there, and it puts off a lot of light. I only have this light at 40% right now. If I crank it up to 100, it would wash me out completely. So very powerful. If you have a bigger space than what I have currently, you'll definitely be covered by this light. Now I do have one more extra light in the corner that just sits and chills. It is my Amarin F21X, but again, the Amarin 60DS could carry on its own. And I love that it's just mounted on top of the stand. And because of how this stand is made, I can lift it up and make it higher or lower it if I need to lower it. It's just like the perfect placement. Now on this light, I have a lantern. The lantern is also from Amarin. This makes a huge difference. On my Amarin 150C, I have a dome, and I really like the dome, but the way the lantern puts out light is just like way more favorable. I feel like it's way more forgiving. It's softer on the skin, but you definitely need to pair this light with the lantern to get the effect that you see here. I was able to finagle this without plugging anything into the wall, and I'm gonna explain it as I go. I bought a 2-pack of batteries. I believe they're called the Sony NPs, and the way they work is you charge them up. Obviously, they come with a little charging base, and then once they're charged up, you can basically mount the batteries onto the light, and then you can plug it up, and that will be your power source. So your light will run off the 2 batteries instead of plugging it into the wall. Now, this is beneficial if you are like me and you shoot in different spaces or you want to diversify your shot. I would suggest it, but you don't have to get it to make the light work. Like I said, it comes with a plug if you need it. That pretty much wraps up lighting, and in the next area, this is where I had to get a little creative. So a lot of you may know, you may not know, I use a massive monitor when I shoot. I have been using a 22-inch Samsung monitor for about a year. I love it. I know it's big, but it just helps me make sure everything that I'm shooting stays in focus. I originally had my Samsung monitor on a rotating cart. So basically it was on its own cart on wheels, right? And you could rotate it vertically and you could rotate it horizontally depending on the type of content I was shooting. I would always be able to like monitor myself essentially. So I decided when I was gonna do this all-in-one setup, I was going to mount my monitor onto the setup some way, somehow. I hadn't really seen people putting monitors this big on setups like this, but I was determined. Now, like I said, I already had this monitor hanging around, but you can always mount smaller monitors, or there are actual camera monitors that just stick onto your camera. I'm just a little bit extra, but if you wanna go this route, you're definitely gonna need the things that I'm going to mention next. First thing is super clamps. Now, you're gonna need a couple of these because you also have to mount your camera onto this pole. So if you can find a pack of 2, if I can find a pack of 2, I'll link them down there for you, but might as well get 2 because you're gonna need 2. Super clamps are exactly what they sound like. They are very strong clamps. They literally just clamp onto the pole. So you clamp it onto the pole and then you kind of twist it and it'll lock whatever you're mounting in place. Can't skip this this step, definitely need them. And I got mine from Newer. I also had to get a 6-inch extension arm. Once the super clamp is like mounted in place, you're going to pop this extension arm into the super clamp, and that is going to give you distance from the pole. So the 6-inch extension arm just brings the items you mount away from the pole to give you wiggle room to like finagle and to move them around. So you're gonna need 2 of those as well. And then for my monitor, because it is a computer monitor technically, I had to find a mount that can mount a computer monitor. Does that make sense? But I wanted to make sure my screen would still rotate like it did on the cart, so I had to find a mount that would allow me to rotate my monitor as well. And of course I found it, and it was from Newer. I feel like Newer has everything a girl needs. It's not sponsored by Newer, but they can call me if they want to. I found this mount and I just added it onto the 6-inch extension arm. Now the thing I like about this mount is not only am I able to rotate my monitor the way I like, but it has a quick release plate. So if for some reason I needed to quickly remove my monitor off this setup, if I wanted to, I don't know, put it back on my original cart to get different shots, it's really easy to do because the plate is quick release. Once I got my monitor on, I was like, oh baby, it's game time. This is perfect and I love it. Also, because of the super clamps, you can always play with placement. When I first had it set up, I had my camera above my monitor, and then when I thought about functionality, I ended up switching it around and putting my monitor above my camera. You're probably thinking, how is the monitor working if I don't plug it in? I have a battery pack. There are better ones out there. I bought this battery pack because I live in Texas and our power, yeah, you know, so I always have a few like battery packs around my house. Now this is like one of those that you can actually plug a plug into. Like I said, I've had this for a long time, and I just was thinking when I was putting the setup together, I was like, oh, I wonder if this would work, and it did. So I plugged my monitor into the battery pack. I just hung the battery pack on the stand. There are nicer looking ones and ones that I think are actually for this, but they're expensive. I saw 2 of them and they were like $400 a piece. And I was like, I don't think so. The battery pack that I use, I think is around $100. By no means is it sleek or sexy, but it does get the job done. I'll link both. I'll link the $400 one and I'll link the one I use and I'll let you choose. But yes, that is the power source for my monitor. That is how I'm able to use my monitor without having to plug it in like I typically would. I'm gonna talk about my camera setups in general because a lot of the videos I've been filming, people have been asking, what are you shooting on? What are you shooting with? What camera is that? What lens is that? So I feel like this is a good opportunity to just throw this in the video for y'all. Again, to mount the camera, I use the same 2 core items that I use to mount my monitor. So the super clamp and the 6-inch extension arm, both of those things are a necessity to mount your camera. The extra thing I had to add in here was like this 360 rotating ball. You're gonna see it and it'll make more sense. And I added this in so I would be able to rotate my camera vertically or horizontally depending on what I was shooting, because this setup for me is like my talking head set, but I do a lot of talking head stuff vertically as well as horizontally. So I wanted to make sure I could do everything on this one stand. Now I had this around, the one I have is from Small Rig, but K&F Concepts, I think that is the brand. They also have them. I'm pretty sure Small Rig probably has them as well. Don't worry, I'll have whatever I use linked down below for you, but this is gonna be a necessity if you need to move your camera around. I would recommend it because other than this, you're just popping your camera on and there's no flexibility. Now, the last thing I would recommend, but it's not a necessity, are quick release plates. Basically what a quick release plate and mount is if you're using different cameras on the setup, instead of having to screw my cameras on and unscrew them every time I want to switch them out, I have this quick release mount that screws onto the ball head, okay? And then I just pop my camera in with a little plate. Then I quickly release my camera by just pushing a button and sliding it off. And the second camera that I use also has that same plate on it, so I can just swap out the cameras easily without having to unscrew and screw them. All right, as far as cameras go, the camera I'm shooting on right now is the Sony a7C II. I love this camera so much. I think it is such a great camera for creatives, especially because it's a phenomenal hybrid. It takes such good photos, but it also does really good video. I typically shoot in 4K 30 for the people who may ask, but I feel like this camera is chef's kiss. I got it a couple months ago and I've just been testing it out in different setups. I just started using this in horizontal content. I'm gonna talk about the camera that y'all usually see in a second. As far as the lens goes, this is the 24mm G Master lens with a 1.4 f-stop. So the 1.4 is how the background gets so blurry, essentially. I just got this lens and I was like so thirsty to try it out. I really like it. My main camera is my Canon R6 Mark II. If you've watched any of my previous videos where I'm like sitting like this talking to y'all, it's probably shot with the Canon R6 Mark II. That is another phenomenal camera. That's been my baby. I've been rocking with that camera for a minute and no real regrets. I'm just a camera freak. I love cameras, so I'm always trying out new things. The lens that I use with my Canon is also a 24mm. It is 1.8 instead of 1.4 because I don't have the like fanciest 24mm with the Canon. So those are my camera setups that I'm usually shooting with. And then the last thing is just my mic, which is what I'm wearing right now. I use a little Rode mic. I just plug it into my camera, mount it on top of my camera, and then I keep the mic part with me. Then I plug in this little mic here and just clamp it on whatever I'm wearing. This keeps me from having to hold the mic. I used to love holding mics, but I would like to just wear it so that the sound can stay consistent, because I noticed when I would be holding mics, if I move my hands around, then in post editing the audio is a little frustrating. So now I just mount it in one spot and ta-da. And that basically covers everything. I'm gonna add in and say I did for this video very not properly mount my iPad mini. It has my script on it, and so I just used a magic arm and a clamp to clamp onto the case. Don't do this. This was just kind of like a, ooh, I forgot I need my script, let me just put this up kind of thing. So I'll show you what it looks like, but this is the one part where I'm like, don't do this. I just did it for the video. I do need to think through a better way to mount my iPad, but it is helpful. I've seen a lot of people also do teleprompters. One time I was working with Google and they wanted me to read off a teleprompter and I embarrassed myself so bad. So I've just been kind of scarred from teleprompters, even though maybe I should get one and then practice, but I haven't. So you could get a teleprompter if you are into that. I've always just used my little tablets to read over my script as I film. And yeah, that's everything. That is my setup. I love it. I definitely want to add some extra things to it and just continue to like tweak it and make it my own. This is doing so much for me already, so I'm so excited to continue to create content with it, and I hope that you guys gain something from this. I hope this is super helpful to y'all as well. If you have any questions, leave them down below and I will make sure to answer them as always. I will see you guys in my next video.